everybody, my name is Courtney Emery and welcome to the Atheists of Facebook online convention. Today, I am going to be talking about one of the reasons that I became an atheist and one of the reasons that I think religion is so harmful. I'm mostly going to be talking about Christianity today because that's the religion that I'm most familiar with. That's the religion I grew up in, and that's the religion that's predominant here where I live at. I live in Tennessee, by the way. So today I'm going to be comparing religion to an abusive relationship. Christianity specifically, like I just discussed, but I feel like other religions could probably fit in with this too. But I feel like that's the core of religion. It's all fear tactics to scare the people into being bound to that religion so that the church can have control and power. So I don't know how many of you guys, grew up in church or maybe have hung around people who are religious or Christian or whatever. But it's not uncommon to hear people say things like they're unworthy, they're sinners, nothing they do is good enough, and only by the grace of God are they worthy, only by the grace of God are they saved. And I think that mentality right there that's harmful. That leads to self-esteem issues and things like that. That whole mentality, it wouldn't matter if it came from a person or from God, some deity is saying you're not good enough. That's not a good mentality to have, and I think that whole idea right there is extremely harmful. It's all one big control mechanism. That you need God to save you. Without God, you're nothing. If a human being was telling another human being that, we would all be looking at that person like, what is wrong with you? Don't talk to that other person like that. Because that's an abusive relationship. Telling a person that they're not good enough, that without me, you're nothing. You're not good enough. You're unworthy. So anyway, I've broken this whole thing down into 5 major things here, 5 signs that a person is in an abusive relationship. So let's go down here. Common signs of abuse. The first one here is being afraid of your partner or afraid to disagree with your partner. So let's just take a moment here and imagine that a devout Christian person decided that they disagreed with something in the Bible. I'm not going to go on that tangent. If you're familiar with Christianity and you've read the Old Testament, there are a lot of things you could probably disagree with there. But let's just say here that a person decided that they disagreed with something in the Bible and they went and told some people that they went to church with. They would immediately be ostracized. They would be kicked out, told you're not welcome here anymore, and I've actually seen these things happen in real life. And sometimes a person can leave their church and go and find another church, and that's fine and it works out. But a lot of times a person is stuck in that church because that church is their family, that's their friends, that's their support system. So when they come to the church and they say, I don't believe in this stuff, oh my goodness, that's the worst thing ever. So, being afraid to voice your opinion in a church is a huge red flag. That's a big issue. That's an abusive relationship. Let's see, point number 2 here. Isolation from certain people, friends and family. The Bible will flat out say things in it. You shouldn't hang out with people who aren't Christians. If you need to leave your family or leave your friends to follow Jesus, then that's what you need to do. I'm pretty sure there's also passages about maybe plucking out your own eye or something for God. Like cut off your own body parts to believe in God. Not in those exact words, of course. I'm paraphrasing here. I haven't read the Bible in years. But Christianity does follow the belief, though, that you only need Jesus. And if your friends are sinners and your family and your friends don't believe in, Jesus, or they don't believe in the things that the church does, then you don't need to hang out with them. And I think a lot of people who are Christians do try to isolate themselves inside their community and like solely focus on God, and God is everything to them. And you can even hear people say, God is my everything, this, that, and the other. It's a controlling relationship. All right, point number 3 here. Sexual control. And this is a huge topic that I'm actually going to talk about for quite a few minutes here. In an abusive relationship, the abuser may force the other person to do things sexually, and that's not okay. That's never okay. And I feel like the roles are a little bit reversed in religion. Christianity would say you can't have sex ever unless it falls under these categories. You have to be in a monogamous marriage that's like, holy before God or whatever. You have to be married in a church. Can only be between a man and a woman, X, Y, and Z. And if and only if you meet these criteria, then it's okay. So they're taking something that is we are biologically programmed to need and to want and to seek out, and they're making that a bad thing. They're saying you are born bad. Just like I talked about a minute ago. You are a born sinner, and nothing you do could be okay. Even your most basic biological needs are not okay. Christianity wants their believers to wait until marriage, and abstinence-only education is kind of a big issue right now, especially with the elections coming up. That's something that a lot of the liberals believe we should do something about. We should pursue teaching more than abstinence education in schools. But Christians, their religion dictates that you should wait until marriage, blah, blah, blah. And that's just, the church wants to have control over the sexuality of their members. Sexual control is a huge issue in an abusive relationship. And, I know that on one hand, you're seeing the abusive side of it from person to person, as in like this person is forcing this person to do things with them. And with the church, they're forcing you to not do things. But either way, I fully believe, and I think most people believe, that your body is yours. It doesn't belong to anybody else, whether you're with a person or you belong to a church or whatever. That it's your decision, and you are not a bad person. You are not a sinner for desiring biological things. That you are made to seek those things out to like procreate. So anyway, that was my little sex topic here that I think is important. Let's go on to the next topic here. Number 4 in an abusive relationship, believing that you can't live without the other person. Have you ever heard a Christian say something along the lines of, I can't live without God? Well, especially as an atheist, if this conversation ever comes up, I hear that a lot. I don't know how you live without God. I could never live without God. And I think that maybe a lot of people are saying, I can't live without hope. And I know that God represents hope to a lot of people, and that's fine. But saying that you don't know how to live without a person, or a deity in this case, especially, in my opinion, a deity that hasn't shown any signs of even existing, but yet you can't live without them. And maybe a little bit of that does spring from hope, but I think a lot of it honestly springs from fear. They are afraid of dying and going to hell, and so they don't want to say anything negative about their God. And that's a sign of being in an abusive relationship, saying you cannot live without this thing in your life. Let's see. Number 5, my last little thing here. In an abusive relationship, the abusee is usually told, you have to explain every action, where you go, what you do, who you're with, on and on and on. When a person is in an abusive relationship, they're often convinced that they need to account for every single decision that they need to make. Christianity will dictate all of those same things. The Bible will tell you, like I talked about a minute ago, to watch who you hang out with. And a lot of Christians who are practicing Christians will say they don't curse. They don't say words like the F word or whatever. And I know that's just a little disclaimer here. I know that's not true of all Christians or all religions or whatever. But people who I have known will say that, because of their religion, because of their love for God, they won't say certain words. They don't hang out with certain people because they don't want to be negatively influenced. There are people who I know, who I would even consider myself to be friends with, who will not hang out with me outside of work or other circumstances because I'm an atheist. No other reason, but it's because I'm an atheist. They don't want to have that conversation with me. Not that I would, but I feel like they just don't want to be negatively influenced. And that's a big part of the reason they look at me as a negative influence in their lives. Let's see. Another thing, Christians will also dictate who their children hang out with. And that's fine. I'm all for a person, kind of keeping an eye on their children, that sort of thing. But just like a little personal side note, I have a sister who is 12 years old, and I am not allowed to talk about religion or my lack thereof with her. My parents are extremely religious, and that would just be like a whole big issue. So maybe when she's older, I'll get to talk about it, but I just think it's crazy to indoctrinate a child and then keep knowledge from them as they're growing up, and I don't know, kind of keep them in this sheltered little bubble. Let's see. And then the next thing on the little list of things to control is that Christians will also control what they watch on TV or what music they listen to. And that's fine, but it's because of their religion that they do it. They're like, oh, this is bad, and I'm sinning if I see boobs on TV. Like, what? But that's what they think. They think that everything they do is one big sin, and then it just goes back into, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, I need God to save me from the things that he just dictated were bad. So anyway, now that I've broken down all of these signs of abuse, you can clearly see that religion is not that far off from an abusive relationship, from one human to another. I think that religion at its core is designed to have control over people, over a population. So they start out by creating problems. They say, X, Y, and Z are all sins. You are bad for wanting these things, for believing in these things. You're a sinner and you need Jesus. Oh, but don't worry. We have offered a solution to this. You only need to believe in God, believe in Jesus, ask for forgiveness, and then that's okay. And then, you're not going to go to hell anymore. So we've got, scare tactics, like going to hell as part of this, scaring people into staying in their religion. Even going so far as to excommunicate them from the church so that they are, they kind of have to stay in this religion or else. There are consequences to not doing it, which is, that's abusive. But what does the church gain out of this? They gain money, power, and control. We could probably talk all day long about the Catholic Church as one. They accept money for atonement of sins. I don't know how many of you have ever been to a Catholic church or heard about a Catholic church, but a lot of times you'll go in and you can do your confession and you say your Hail Marys or whatever, and then they'll be like, oh, you only have to pay X amount of dollars and then your sins are all forgiven. What? If somebody created a religion today like that, nobody would go to that church, but that's what they do. We can talk about evangelists, specifically televangelists, who sit on television every week and they'll say, tithe your seed, give your seed, and God will bless you. God will give it back to you. Give everything you have to me, and God will give it back to you. And then they go off and fly their multi-million-dollar jets. But apart from money, they gain power and control. We can all look back, hundreds of years about how, religion will have a control over the population of an area. There are all sorts of historical things, but looking at today, like our society in America today, especially with the elections coming up, religion influences our politics way more than it should. And I talked about like abstinence-only education earlier and things like that, but especially this past year with the gay rights movement, abortion's been a big social issue lately, and all of these things are only issues because religion dictates that they're issues. Religion is controlling the ideas. They're saying, it doesn't matter what you think is right or wrong, this is what the religion says is right or wrong. And if you don't follow the religion, you are wrong. You're a sinner, you're a bad person, you're going to hell. So it's all one big fear tactic to control the population. And so that's my biggest issue with Christianity, with religion in general. Today, and that's one of the reasons that I'm an atheist. I grew up in, we can go on like a little speech here about how I grew up in a religious household. Evangelical, non-denominational was the type of church that I went to. We would literally go around like preaching to people, like literally just walking around, walking up to people and going, hi, let me tell you about Jesus Christ. So I was indoctrinated as a child, and I mean, that's, I think there's actually another speaker who may have spoken earlier or will speak later, who is going to talk about indoctrination of children, and that's a whole subject that I'm going to let her go on about because it's flat out harmful. It's harmful to our society, and it's harmful to the children, and that's not okay with me. So these are the reasons that I'm an atheist, and if you guys have any questions, I will be around at 6:30 p.m. Saturday night for questions and answers. Thank you all, and have a great evening.